So I've been thinking recently about my art process and all the things that go into it and the various steps I take. And I've started like sharing just snippets of it in like screenshotted picture form. But it occurred to me that I could absolutely record the thing, like any digital art I do, I could absolutely record it. So I had this last idea, I decided to shoot for it. Just try it out, see what would happen. So that's what we're gonna do today. So concept for this, I was just kind of in a mood, but like creative. I just wanted to draw, didn't care especially what it was. But I did have kind of a concept in mind for like drawing a cat. And it was something relatively easy to do digitally and wouldn't take over much time. Which is good because I was hit by this mood at something like, I don't know, 9 o'clock at night. I wasn't able to get to it for another hour and a half. So what I do, I'll start with like just a really super loose sketch. And then on top of that, just to help me get the shapes and positions and figure that out. Then on top of that, I'll just pick a brighter color that somewhat contrasts with what I want the end result to be. And I'll draw like the line art and on top of that. I don't really ever keep the line art. It's mostly there so I know how to really color in the lines. But like it does help me figure out a character, and that's where shapes and expressions and features start getting added in. And something I picked up from some other artists that I watch, it was adjusting the background color so you're not just going on white. And it really does kind of help with knowing the vibe. Like if you kind of have a concept for what color you want your subject to be, and a concept for what the background might be, you can kind of... It helps you get a good contrast and helps pull it out. And can kind of help visualize the end product before you get there. So then, like the next step I do after I get the like line art done is I will just go in and like flatten my colors. And with this particular image, like drawing, that was very easy because there's only one color in my flats. I kept things pretty simple with this one, owing at least a little bit to just how late at night it is. But then, like, once I get the flats, I will add layers, which is something that the software lets me do, where I can just draw on one thing without it affecting anything else on the page. And I can toggle them on and off. That's where the line art keeps popping back up and on top underneath. And so I'll go on and add layers of a highlight color. Or in a lot of cases, I'll also have a low light. Sometimes on the same layer, sometimes not. This time I started with my lowest color, which is not something I do very often. And I realized sort of halfway through that, oh yeah, if I'm doing shading now, I kind of need to know where my light source is. Because even if I like mess with a light sort of tool, which I do for like the finished product quite a bit, it's still, the subject itself would still have different colors pulling through that reflect whether or not they are in the light or not. And something I was kind of delighted to realize as I was doing this is I didn't have to spend too much time adding lines or details. Because, like, that is something, that's something that I do a lot with the shading. I'll use the shading to pull out shapes and lines. And in this case, I realized that I could use my blending tool, which is what I'd use to blend out all like, the highlights, lowlights. Not lowlights in this one, just all the highlights. I'll just scribble it on and then blend it out. And I realized I could use that to add texture to the fur. So just kind of scribble it back and forth. And that was a pleasant, like, revelation for me with this particular piece. Because this isn't something I wanted to be overly complex. just sit down, hammer it out. I was feeling artsy, feeling creative, wanted to draw something. So I was like playing a lot with kind of values. Had a number of reference photos that I was looking at on my phone to help with just the shape of the face and like some of the coloration. So there's not too many russet brown cats, but that was the concept I had in mind for this one. And this point, assuming I have this synced properly, I am adding like some scarring because that's another part of the concept I have for this particular cat. I don't want to go into too much detail because I don't have a lot of detail. And what I have thus far without much context sounds kind of bonkers. But a lot of my drawings are inspired by characters I've created for writing. And this one is no different. All goes to plan. This might will ideally be second or third book. I'm currently working on the first one. And I'm not going to do too much world building on any of the others until I've got at least the manuscript for the first. Because that world building already is more than I expected to be doing. Although I didn't really have expectations. I tend to go extra with the world building. But like, one of my favorite things to do, like, refocusing on the drawing, one of my favorite things to do are eyes. Because I can add so many shades. I will stare in a mirror at my eyes to just pull out what colors are there, what textures are in my, like, iris. And it's something I really enjoy bringing into digital art. Like, if the eyes are big enough to, if the eyes are big enough to register color, then they've got texture and varying shades of the color. And that's something I have a lot of fun doing. Like, regardless, animal eyes, human eyes, I just enjoy it. It's especially if I have any excuse at all to make them more luminescent or glowing or really poppy, which is something I did a lot with this one. And the backgrounds aren't really my forte. They're never really the focus of the piece. I'll try to add, like, some for character and to, like, maybe build story, but it's never the focus. So what I'm doing here is kind of getting something vaguely resembling maybe Gears. A bit of a steampunk vibe with this and the colors I've got going on and like the concepts I have for this cat and the story that I will ideally write eventually. Probably not for at least a year, but eventually. Then another thing that I mentioned briefly earlier, but that I really appreciate about digital art is the various tools and things like the light tool and the shadow tool. And I'm using this light tool a lot. I'll like pull it in front of things. I do drop the opacity a lot because otherwise it will turn into like looking like a glowing light bulb and you won't be able to see anything underneath it. Like what I'll do, I'll drop the opacity and then I'll just pull it in front of the thing and then just use the eraser to get rid of anything I don't want to be overly lit up. I did a lot of messing around with the lighting on this one because I wasn't entirely happy. Like, God, something that's kind of decent, and then I looked at noticed something else, and was like, okay, I'm going to adjust this. And then I was like, not loving the lighting anymore. So I did a lot of just messing around, a little bit of tinkering. Had a lot of back and forth before I was entirely happy with it. Like, just experimenting with pulling some of the rays in front of the cat, tucking them all behind, trying to bring out more of the background, fade the background away. It was a lot of back and forth, but I did eventually get it to a point where I was happy with it, which is always great, always appreciated. Then just like sign it and do any last finishing touches, and here's the cat. Let me know if you have any name ideas for like this particular cat, because that's a thing I'm lacking right now. And I'm not trying overly hard to come up with anything, because that is a down the road project. But it would be fun to have. So I guess if I post this anywhere that it can comment, let me know name ideas. Anyway, thanks for joining me, and bye!